Welcome to the Project with Sam and Lewis, the podcast that looks at projects throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lewis.
And on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Project Moonbase.
All the way from 1953.
We are the oldest project that we've covered, I think.
Non-report project.
Yeah, I mean, some of the reports went back into the...
I think the Lynmouth flood might have been 1953.
Okay,
so the same time.
Yeah. But definitely kind of fictional film, movie, TV.
Yeah.
Stuff,
and it certainly was 1953.
It certainly was of its era. That's one way of putting it.
Yes, it was black and white.
And dull all over. But we also have a couple other things to talk about. We are going to be talking about a certain number of things in personal projects.
We are.
I watched Disney Plus's Lightyear.
Ooh.
And I've also been reading Neil Gaiman's The Sandman.
Oh, that's got a new series out.
It has,
it?
And that might be why I was reading it. You've been watching anything that people might want to know about?
So I finished watching Fleabag.
Lovely.
And I've been reading A Game of Thrones.
Ooh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, we'll get into that a bit later on.
Yeah, so if you want to skip to those, we've got time codes in the episode description. But before that, how are you today, Lewis?
Yeah, not bad. Been busy at work this week. But generally fine. Still have a shoulder injury.
Yeah, you said 9 weeks?
9 weeks.
Yeah. Gosh.
Which is fun. But yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, worked from home today. It was incredibly humid. We had a bit of rain for the first time, didn't we?
Yeah, I got up this morning, threw on shorts and t-shirt, and I was reading my book, and then I was like, oh shit, I need to leave. Quickly went out the door without looking at the weather and just wearing shorts and t-shirt, and it was pouring it down. Yeah. And I was like, it'll be fine.
Not too fast to go for you though.
No, and it warmed up, so
yeah, that's the thing, it was it was like baking hot afterwards, but we just had that weird monsoon season period. Yeah.
Yes, the great British monsoon season.
The one day in August.
Yeah.
We have a first segment. What's that called, Lewis?
Project News.
There we go.
So this one is an interesting one. I found an article and I was like, oh, great. Perfect. What a thing to talk about.
Okay.
And it's a shit article, honestly. It pissed me off reading this.
You can relay the information to us very eloquently, I'm sure.
So it's from win.gg.
Nice. Is that a games thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is Project Zomboid's release date?
Oh.
Has it been delayed?
Okay. Because we played the alpha, is that right? Or maybe it's just gone into beta?
I can't remember. Yes, this article goes into the fact that it's been going 11 years. They've in the making.
Yes, yeah.
They've released early versions. They're working on a new thing. They've had some setbacks, and doesn't give any information.
Beautiful. But it is another reminder that we should be going back to that soon.
Yes, exactly. Because as we mentioned before, maybe on pod, maybe not, it all kind of blurs to me.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
There is a multiplayer version now since we played it.
Yeah.
So we are planning on revisiting that. This article is not very good. I think I might just send them our episode and be like, this is how you cover Project Zomboid.
Yeah.
I'm sure the makers of Project Zomboid prefer our episode to this.
Have they retweeted that article?
I doubt it.
Exactly. That's all you need to know then, really, isn't it?
And yeah, there's not really any new information in here. There's literally a bit that's like, so it's why is it still in development? When is Project Zomboid release date? And then it's got 2 paragraphs saying,
maybe soon, maybe later.
So yeah, not more else to say to that, but it really annoyed me that there was no news in that article.
Yeah, but it's nice to bring it up on pod because we have talked about it a couple of times on and off, and it will be something that we'll be coming back to in the next couple of months.
Yes, that will be good. The other article I got is from Countryfile.
Ooh. People who really like countries, then, eh?
It's 37 juvenile white stalks released at West Sussex Reserve.
I didn't know where that was going there.
What?
It's like, what's a white stalk?
Where did the project go? Oh, the White Stalk Project releases 37 juvenile white stalks. I hadn't scrolled back up. So they're trying to restore the population of white stalks in our local area. Hoping for
like the buffalo thing from before.
Yeah, they're looking to have at least 50 breeding pairs by 2030.
Yeah.
And that'll be cool. I don't think there's currently 9 breeding pairs of white stalks in Sussex.
Oh, that's not very much.
I don't think I've ever seen a stalk in Sussex.
I've seen like a heron before, but
yeah,
I think they're smaller than storks.
But that'll be cool if we have a bunch of stalks around here.
Yeah, heron.
Bring in those babies.
Yeah, I can't say. I don't know. I've seen. Storks are. I think I've seen a heron, but not a stork. Yeah.
Storks are quite big, aren't they?
Yeah, they look pretty intimidating in these photos.
I'm sure they won't be as bad as the seagulls we get down here.
You imagine they just take over and they're stealing chips and
children.
It'd be like the opposite of the storks bringing the children. You'd see a stork carrying a baby, like the nature, the beautiful nature, the parents.
Yeah, my baby. It'll be our very own "A Dingo Ate My Baby."
Yeah, a stork carried my baby halfway across Brighton and then probably dropped it
and ate the insides.
Wow, so off to a nice start.
Yep, that is Project News for the week. Woo! Which means we can go straight into our big topic.
Yeah.
1953's Project Moonbase.
Yeah.
Which fortunately was on YouTube.
Yes, it was. You said there was a couple of copies.
The
one I had was uploaded by an Italian person.
I ended up specifically finding the one that you watched so that we watched the same version.
Yeah. I mean, I did link it to you as well.
Yeah, but then I stuck it on my TV and I was like, it's hassle.
But so it was like in the original language and I was like, okay, is this an American? Oh, yeah, and it was.
Yeah. So it's directed by Richard Talmadge. Obviously, because this film is 70 years old, there wasn't anything I recognised any of these people from.
No, I was kind of hoping that I would recognise someone.
I thought there'd be one person But Richard Talmadge does have the credit of his last ever film was the 1967 Casino Royale film.
Okay, yeah.
Which is really bad.
I think we've mentioned it on pod before. Yeah. I've never seen it before.
It's like a satire of James Bond.
Yeah, it was something to do with licensing and it was out. Yeah. That one was somehow out of licensing and they managed to do it. And it's more like a parody. Yeah, you said satire. Yeah.
And it's really not very good. It's like every 5 minutes, it's like, hey, James Bond is a womanizer.
Okay.
Every 5 minutes for like 2 hours. So we've got the cast. The main 3 people are Donna Martell as Bright Eyes.
Yeah, there's a moment where she's like, I'm not called Bright Eyes, it's Bright something else.
So her it's spelled Briteise. So it's like Brit Ice.
Right.
But it's just Bright Eyes.
But do they say it? They're saying it's a bit of a sexist thing,
yeah,
right?
Which, happens in this film.
There's a moment at the start that was shocking to say.
I think I know it's bit. Yeah, we'll get to that. We've got Ross Ford as Bill Moore.
And is he the other guy who's on the
co-pilot?
Who I'd never wrote his name down. I think he's like other
Bill.
guy.
He's Bill.
He's other guy. I think I found out he was called Bill towards the end, but most of it was just like, this is a guy.
Yeah.
Also, everyone looks the same in this film.
Finally, the other main person is Hayden Rourke, who plays the General.
Right. Who's on the screen a lot.
Yeah.
Not our screen. I mean, he is on the screen a fair bit, but he mostly appears on a large screen in there.
Yeah, apart from like the opening bits, but
yeah, there was 2 like older guys. I mean, there was like the older guy, the Dr. Werner guy, but there was 2 like army guys, and at one point one is talking to the woman in one room and one is talking to that old woman in another room. I was like, I don't know which one of these people is which. Everyone looks the fucking same in this film.
Do you want to guess the IMDb rating for this film?
3.9.
Ooh, not bad. 3.3.
Yeah, I was gonna go 2.
After I finished watching, it came out of the video on YouTube, and the next suggested video was bad movie reviews 1953 Project Moonbase. I was like, oh, okay. But before
the consensus is there,
before we get into the fun, I've got the Google description here.
Yeah, I've got my own description if you want to hear that afterwards.
Okay, yeah, you do yours after. In the not too distant future of 1970, the United States is considering building bases on the moon and send a team to investigate. One of the team turns out to be a foreign spy, putting the entire operation and the future of the world in danger.
I think I knew that already because I'd put this on our long list at some point.
Yeah.
Is he a foreign spy?
Oh, yeah, right. So when they were like, oh, there's some bad guys who want to challenge our freedom.
Yeah.
1953, I was expecting them to be Russian.
Yes.
It's just a bunch of American guys.
Yeah, we'll talk about it as we go through, but the first like 10 to 20 minutes is with a bunch of people who are the bad guys, and I wasn't sure if we were supposed to be on their side because they're never really shown as like bad guys.
And also like the doctor on the ship is Dr. Werner, who is like it's like a German name.
It's not
but
really
he's American.
Him. Yes, yeah.
So yeah, what's your description?
Mine description is Project Moonbase, as bland and barren as the surface of the moon itself.
Ooh, that's
more of a one-word review than anything.
That's gonna get the listeners excited for the next hour. Strap yourselves in.
Well, I mean, the film is an hour and 3 minutes, something like that. So I would be surprised if we talk about it for longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely bits to talk about.
Yes, there are. Yes, and I'm quite looking forward to talking about a handful of those bits there.
A handful, eh?
I'm ready. Yeah, a handful. I could fit them in there.
So it opens with like a classic 50s opening with like the big lettering and the music, and I was like, the
music. Yeah, it was cool, dramatic music. And then it went to like sci-fi, B-movie.
I literally written down like, love me some retro sci-fi.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm actually well up for this.
And to its credit, some of the like sci-fi, some of the sci-fi aesthetics and stuff are some of the best parts of it.
Yeah, definitely.
In their own way.
And for 1953, it looks really good.
Yeah,
like
the
miniatures and stuff are great. Yeah.
And it's kind of like with Blue Earth SOS, we talk about the retrofuturism. It's kind of a similar vibe to that, isn't it? Like this kind of Jetsons, like 1950s version of the future. And that kind of stuff's cool. But what we open on in a moment is not that at all.
Well, we open with a quick history.
Yeah, the history
from 1953 of like,
I wasn't looking because I was like, all right, the credits are going to play for 5 minutes, and I looked up and it was halfway through. I had to go back.
The main point is it's got 1970.
Yeah,
they want to build a space station on the moon, so they're going to go around the moon.
Yeah,
get some pictures.
There's
also enemies of freedom.
Yes. So again, you're thinking
station.
Russians at this point.
Yeah, because it's such like Cold War like language.
Yeah, maybe it's like an allegory for it rather than being direct. But yeah, then we open in an office, which is of course the most sci-fi of locations you can have. Most standard 1950s office.
Yeah.
And what is it? Oh, they're like checking in with loads of locations. They're like,
like Sector 13, come in.
Yeah.
Come in, stand by.
And we don't know who these people are, do we?
Yeah.
Despite it kind of saying enemies of freedom, then moving into this, I guess that's what we're supposed to.
Then this guy comes in and he's a bit weird.
Yeah, he's like the boss of whoever these guys are.
He's called Roundtree.
Wow. Well done for getting some names.
So he sits down at the computer.
Yeah.
Looks like they've called somebody. He's like, Roundtree here.
Yeah, they've got some good 1950s delivery, haven't they?
Yeah, they brief him with the situation on Project A.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it's a couple of years early for that.
Yeah. I didn't realize they were such big Jackie Chan fans in 1953.
Yeah. He talks about like, he's like, there's an eye in the sky that needs to be like taken down.
Yeah, so these are the enemies of freedom.
Yeah.
And he's kind of complaining that they can't get a man on the space station to destroy it.
Yeah, they've got like 300 operatives, he says.
Yeah, and then he said we've got 2 months to destroy it. And they've got 300 operatives who who resemble scientists that may be called up.
It's such a long-winded
and
plan.
they'll just have an offhand comment of like, yeah, they're all going to follow us because we've got like their families and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, nice.
They say like families or monetary reasons.
Yeah.
So it's either kidnapping or bribery.
I like that they're just like, yeah, we'll pick the 300 people most likely to go to the space station and get somebody that looks exactly like them.
My notes are very reflective of my opinion at this time. Boring guy talking about destroying the space station, ?
See, at this bit, I thought it was dragging a bit because it's 70 years old.
Yeah,
but
I was struggling to...
I've got enough intrigue in this that I can...
I was trying, but I was finding it slightly difficult to follow.
Yeah.
So we skip ahead 2 months, is that right?
Yeah, 2
months. The calendar's a bit confusing. It kind of spins around a few times.
When it goes to like September and you're like, okay, 2 months have passed.
It kind of goes to like the end of August, then the end of September. And I was like, surely you could have just done it from the first of the month, make it a bit less confusing.
But we're with Roundtree again, and he's found out that for the project, they're sending up a Dr. Werner.
Yeah, he's been sat on the desk for 60 days or more.
Yeah. No, like he is leaving in 48 hours.
Yeah. They're like, we got a double for him. And then they like go off and talk to someone and they come back and they're like, we got a double for him.
Yeah.
And they have 2 photos of like this guy.
And it's literally the same guy with different hair.
Different hair. And they say like, oh, he's staying at a hotel. We need to go and like...
Yeah, go get a room next door to Werner.
Yeah.
And this hotel's so weird. So they're in San Francisco. And like... They've got a door that goes into this hotel room. It's just like a little office.
Yeah, I don't understand. They don't like. I know a lot of what I'm going to complain about is just like you say, it's a 70-year-old film, but there's no explanation for anything.
Like, imagine if you were staying at a hotel and you're an official. You're gonna have a fancy hotel,
yeah,
and there's just a door in the corner of the room, and you open it, and there's just like a bunch of people sitting in an office.
Luckily, he doesn't open that door.
Yeah, you'd be like, what the fuck?
And they're just talking. There's like at one point it looks like there's 2 or 3, and then there's 2 more guys in the corner. There's like at least 5 guys just in this room.
But before Werner gets into the room,
must have been where they got the burger chain name from.
Yes. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We'll go into Five Guys in Brighton and be like, we know
Moonbase. They'll be like, what the fuck is
But before Werner gets in there, a couple of them go into the room and kind of they've put in like listening devices.
Yeah, and they bug the phone as well.
Yeah, so they go in like check they can hear it from the next room. They probably could just stand leaning against the wall.
Yeah, get a couple of glasses.
They don't look like thick walls.
No, probably because it's a very cheap set.
Yes.
It's probably the same set as The Office from before.
Yeah, quite possibly. But all preparations ready, and the double arrives.
Yes.
And he's like, just Werner with black hair. And Roundtree makes it clear, it's like, you must destroy the space station. There's 2 ways to destroy it. You either go to the bomb room and set off a bomb.
I missed that.
And I was like, cool, of course, all space stations have a bomb room.
Yeah.
Nothing could ever go wrong there. Or you can take control of the moon ship and ram it into the space station. There is 2 options.
Right. And the moon ship is something that we see later on, isn't it? Like the little shuttle thing.
Yeah. I was like, okay. And I think they mentioned later on that they're atomic bombs as well. It's not just any old bomb.
Yeah, in the opening crawl, it mentions like the atomic bombs force them to do more surveillance and stuff, but they don't really...
Why have they got bombs on a space station? Anyway, he gets his hair sorted.
Yeah, he's like, oh, just hang on, I just need to go do my hair. And then he comes back and he's just the other guy from the other room.
But the real Werner is in his room and gets a call to say there'll be a car outside the front of the hotel in 10 minutes.
Yes.
It's going to be an official car.
Which I think he says, I look for the insignia.
Yeah.
Which means it'll have like Space Force or
I
whatever.
think it's USSF.
Yeah, Space Force.
Yeah. And He's like, okay, so he calls up like the reception and be like, can I get my bags?
Yeah, and they've got a guy dressed as a bellhop.
It's Roundtree.
Is it Roundtree?
The guy who's in charge.
So stupid.
Like, he knocks on the door and he comes in and like grabs the bag.
Does he come through that side door?
No, he comes through the front door.
It's like, wow, you came from my locked cupboard. But he realizes, like, hang on, you came too quickly, and then he just bashes him on the
just
head.
knocks him out, and he falls through a table and knocks stuff over.
The thing is, if they were gonna do that, they might as well just come through the secret door and just like grabbed him. It's so stupid.
But the fake Werner,
yes,
the Wrongner, as I've labelled him here.
Okay, Wrongner, go.
Wrongner runs in and puts on Werner's clothes.
Yes. Which
he
probably didn't need to do. I think he was already wearing like a suit. And stuff, but and he goes down to meet he gets his luggage taken by the real bellhop, I think. Doesn't he?
And they quickly take Werner off to the office, and we don't see him again.
No, they mention him later on.
They do.
They say they found him. I don't know in what state they found him, with his throat slit, maybe, or
the bit in Pulp Fiction.
Which
what's his face? Wallace. Marcellus Wallace is in the basement of like a gun shop.
It's got a gag in his mouth. The driver that meets him, this is the first we see of this wonderful retro sci-fi aesthetic. The driver has an incredibly stupid little like hat on. Like they have weird like caps. It's the same ones they wear when they're on the ship.
Oh yeah.
They kind of look like, I don't know what, they're like skull caps with slight like ear coverings.
Yeah, they're almost like swimming caps that are like loose.
Loose swimming caps, like solid swimming caps, but with like sideburns on them.
Yeah.
And they go down
ears
slightly.
are still exposed.
Or like if you had a Lego hair. Like a Lego toupee kind of thing,
yeah.
And I imagine there's some sort of like grey or blue or something because this film's in black and white. So
yeah, I imagine like red, to be honest.
Everything's quite light coloured. They're uniforms, but yeah, it could be red. Yeah. Or to be fair, actually, the reason you're probably thinking red is because on YouTube, one of the reviews has a thumbnail with a colorized version of it.
Is it red?
And it may well be red.
Maybe I'm just good at seeing colour in a colourless world.
Yes, it's red. I'll show you a picture.
Oh yeah, I didn't realise they had red tops on.
Well, they didn't because it was black and white. The lower half, which we won't ruin yet, is a kind of greyish light blue colour.
Okay, so they're at USSF Spacecom.
Yes.
And then there's two guys in a room, and one of them's just doing random maths. Like it's just nonsensical maths.
He's a physicist. He's an astrophysicist.
And I think it's the general and Bill.
Yeah. So this is what I didn't get, because as well as Bill, there's another guy as well as Bill and the general.
Yeah.
But they're talking about the mission.
And the general basically says like, Bill's like, oh, we don't need Werner, we don't need scientists up here. And the general's like, no, we need scientists because that's how we get our funding. Like,
yes, yeah, they're like, oh, we don't want a scientist on the mission.
Then he's like, they get
civilian scientists.
Yeah, they get a telegram.
Yes, they get some updated news,
and it's on the screen for ages.
The telegram.
And I couldn't make sense of it.
No, because it's all stops and starts and shorthand.
But it makes sense that it says that Bright Eyes is going to be the pilot on the mission.
Yes.
And Bill's a bit pissed off because he doesn't like Bright Eyes.
Yes.
We don't know why.
Yeah. They also say before this, we find out, which I didn't know, but you did know from that opening, that the Moonbase isn't set up yet, and this is part of what they're doing now. Because I didn't think I got that from the opening credits. They're not happy about this news. Something's changed in the plans.
Yeah.
Then there's news that she's arriving, or that Bright Eyes is arriving. We don't know it's a woman.
Yes. But the general does say, Bill, you're going to be co-pilot.
Right.
Bill's like, oh, it's not fair on Macintosh. He's like, no, it should be you.
Right.
And we're like, okay. And then they're like, Colonel Bright Eyes has arrived,
and they're like, and with
Polly Prattel, the the journalist.
Right, she's a journalist. Okay.
I've literally written here, Polly Pratel is with him, and the next line, Bright Eyes is a woman.
I've got Bright Eyes is a woman. Scandal. Some rich woman is with her. I thought she was like an investor or something. She's dressed up quite fancily.
She's just a journalist.
Yeah, but she's dressed up like, you know, like in The Simpsons when there's like an old rich woman at like a party and they're like, ooh.
Yeah,
she's
she
dressed
literally
up like
is. That. The general doesn't like Pratel.
No. So this is when the other guy talks to Pratel, and the general talks to Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
And I've written here, her name isn't Bright Eyes.
Yeah.
Is that derogatory?
He calls her Bright Eyes. She's like, my name's not Bright Eyes.
So what is it?
Brit Ice.
Right.
Which, yeah, and it's kind of like, oh, they call her Bright Eyes because she's a woman.
She's got beautiful bright eyes.
So much of the plot of this film is because she's a woman.
Yes, even when things are kind of getting better later, they're like, wait in the other room while we talk.
Yeah.
She's like, can I come up, please? No.
Yeah.
And this is one of the bits we were talking about earlier.
So, like, they're arguing, Bright Eyes and the general are arguing about something.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Maybe she's doing
she wants to land on the moon.
Right.
And he's like, no, we're not ready.
Right.
You just have to fly around it. She's not happy. And he says, if you keep arguing, I'll bend you over and spank you.
Yes, and he says the room is soundproof, so no one will hear you screaming.
Yeah.
And she shuts up because he's serious. I think she says you can't be serious, and he's like, I'm dead serious, and like comes towards her.
I think it's actually because she doesn't want Bill to be a co-pilot.
Yeah, co-pilot.
But it's basically like, yeah, you know, it's the 50s. If a woman doesn't do what you say, just threaten her with sexual assault.
I'm just going to beat her and touch her ass. Yeah. And that really set the tone for me.
Yeah, same. I was watching this with Christina. She was kind of playing it on her Switch. And at that point, she just kind of put it down and looked at me. And I was like, yeah, don't worry, I heard it too. But because of that, because she's threatened with a spanking,
yes,
she accepts Bill as her co-pilot.
Of course. As any woman in the 1950s would do.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1970s, but technically.
Yeah. Actually, remind me at the end to look at Wikipedia.
Okay. Just look at Wikipedia. Is that in the trivia area?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, I'll write it down.
So the general's going through the plan with Pratel, the journalist, and Werner, the not scientist.
Yeah, we don't really. Suddenly, he's just in a room with them. I think he was just in the corner of the room waiting.
No, he said he was waiting for briefing whilst the general spoke to Bill and Bright Eyes.
Right. Okay, I missed that. Yeah.
Basically, like Pratel's asking about she's asking questions. She's like, "What's the purpose of this?" My boss says it's all a boondoggle.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah,
I was like, okay, interesting terminology.
I assume that means like a waste of money.
Yeah, but the general's like, this is necessary to create a moon base, and he then goes off about like the measurements and stuff about the space station.
I know you're in the middle of something, but the first Google description dictionary of boondoggle is an unnecessary, wasteful, or fraudulent project.
So it really is a boondoggle.
So some would say that this whole film is a boondoggle.
Some would say it certainly is.
Maybe we should have changed the name to the Boondoggle Project.
I mean, we could, although
we do cover a lot of boondoggles on this.
I don't really want to base our entire podcast on this film.
No, it's just a term. It's an incredibly common term from the 1950s.
Okay.
Boondoggle.
Anyway,
continue. Yes.
So the general explains that like the space station's high enough that it's not pulled in by Earth's gravity, but it's going fast. It's fast enough that it's not pulled in gravity, but not. No.
Yeah.
It's in orbit.
Yeah, they call it. What do they call it? Free fall. Yeah.
Free fall. And Patel is amazed that she'd have no weight.
Yes.
On there.
When he says everything's weightless, she's like, "Wow, is there any way you can arrange for me to go up there?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah, no, he's like, it costs $300 a pound to send, like a pound of weight.
Right, okay.
And also he looks and is like, must all weigh less than 160 pounds. And she's like, okay.
Like,
and I was like,
you're basically too big to come with us, unfortunately.
And Werner asks about the bombs and the bomb room. And the general says that's classified.
Yeah, they say everyone will have magnetic shoes, which is another way of saying that they won't have to do weightless effects while they're there. They do show the shoes off at one point.
Yeah, and right, so far in this film, like, okay, this could be, once they get into space, this could be quite entertaining, like, and quite intrigued where it goes.
Yeah, I was on board at this point.
With the Werner stuff. Even though I'm not quite sure about, like, the sexual assault.
Yeah, so I say that. I was quite on board with the plot in some way. And I mean, even the thing that was, it's not even just the pacing, like that whole guy just talking for ages with that woman. It was just, he was such a bad actor. It was like he forgot what he was saying every like line. He'd like start and stop each bit. And I genuinely believe he was reading it off a card on the side. Like he was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But the content was
interesting
enough. Yeah.
So it's takeoff ready.
Yes.
And Bright Eyes and Bill in this rocket, it's just got like a lift on the side of the rocket.
It's so funny. There's like a swing seat that just like goes up.
It reminded me of those seats that like old people have to go like down the stairs. Stair lift. It's like that, just on the side of the rocket.
Yeah, and it's for one person at a time, which is so pointless.
But then we get a countdown.
Well, they've got their outfits on, so these are the ones we were describing earlier. The bit that we didn't mention is they have like super short shorts,
and like, it's just they're basically wearing what you'd imagine like kind of some like rebel people in the 60s would go to the beach wearing sort of thing,
or even like almost like a gym like PE outfit kind of thing.
I was thinking like I'm imagining this is sort of thing you'd see on like a Beach Boys album cover,
right?
Like them wearing this kind of stuff.
Definitely like short, like swim short / sports short kind of things. Kind of plain tops, and then these weird skull cap things.
But the ship's ready to go up, and it blasts off.
Yeah.
And there's some G-force effects on the bits. They're like laying down in these kind of bed things. So the four of them.
Three of them.
The
things they're in are kind of like the seat you're sitting in now, Lewis, like a reclining chair.
Yeah.
That's always set to kind of 45 degrees.
It's kind of like the chairs you get around the swimming pool at a hotel when you're on holiday.
Like a lawn chair, lounger chair kind of thing. But like rather than being low down, they're kind of raised in a kind of sci-fi way.
Yeah, and they're kind of made into like what are the beds called?
Like bunk beds
kind of set up.
Okay, yeah. And they have like a strap across the middle. And I guess the point is you get in them and it stops you flying around. Basically.
Yeah, when they take off, the G-force hits them. We see the gravity.
Yeah, just spinning around.
Like, and the actors have basically been told
different reactions
to push back, and they pull some faces, and they're like, ooh.
Well, there's two very distinct reactions between them. The guy, Bill, he starts dripping with sweat. I think he's the sweatiest person I've ever seen on film. And he's pulling the most excruciating faces. And Bright Eyes, whatever, the Colonel, she just passes out almost immediately.
Yeah.
And it's like, women, even though this film is kind of vaguely pushing against some sort of stereotypes, she still just passes out.
Yeah.
And he's kind of clutching and screaming and but
eventually they get into space.
Yeah, and we get some cool shots of the outside of the rocket.
Yeah, and it's cool like miniatures and
just
stuff.
Moving. It's very kind of, the pacing is very chilled and very kind of somber.
And they unstuck themselves and get up, and Bill's like, hey, Bright Eyes, you ever had space sickness? And she's like feeling a bit sick. She's like, of course not. But the rocket is now making its way to the space station.
Yes, and it docks with it's like a big ring, isn't it? The space station, with like a couple of slots in it for rockets.
And like on each side, and it goes in. I've written these miniatures are really good.
Yeah, there is some good. It reminded me like in some ways, this is gonna sound really stupid, but like of Interstellar when they're doing like a really, really, really rudimentary version of that kind of docking procedure and stuff like that.
But it seems quite. There's a few things in this film that, like, because it's before the space race kicked off.
Yes, yeah.
Certain things happen they don't make a big deal out of.
Yeah.
Like the docking is always like in a space film, the docking's always a big scene.
Yeah.
You think like I said in Stellar, in The Martian, where they're trying and they go out like trying to line up everything. It's always a big thing. And in this it's just like in we go.
Just go straight in. Yeah, that's funny. I hadn't really thought about that.
There's another thing later on that I was really like, wait, you're just not gonna mention this? But
I think I know what that is. Yeah.
But yeah, they go on board, and as they're walking down, Bill overhears somebody listening or watching baseball, and kind of stops. And Bright Eyes is like, "Nope, come on." And this is a great shot when they're walking down the corridor. So they're walking down the right side, like away from us, and on the left side, walking towards us, is a guy walking, but on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And part of me is like, that's not how this works.
No.
Like, you don't just have random
well,
bits of gravity.
They did say that they had magnetic shoes on, so they did say you could walk on any surface, but there would be a floor still that everyone walks on. It's not like
at one point they walked past the sign saying, "Please don't walk on the walls." And I was like,
that's funny.
At that point, Christina's like, "Is this like Airplane, but like 30 years earlier, as in the film Airplane?"
Yeah.
She thought it was a satire, and I was like, I don't think it is. It's just old.
It's not supposed to be funny at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be some jokes throughout, but I think I probably missed them if there were.
So Bright Eyes and Bill go into a room for like a briefing.
Yeah.
And suddenly that on the wall.
Yes, this is what I for a lot of this was kind of not paying attention is the nicest way of saying it.
God, it'd be a shame if you had to do a podcast about it, wouldn't it?
I know. Well, I said they're meeting the crew. Oh, they're just on the wall. So why are they having this interview with them while they're all sitting at a table?
Yeah.
And they're all just like,
there's three people.
It's so rude. It's like standing up while everyone's sitting down.
But they sit down, and the guy interviewer's like, if you wouldn't mind, can you put your strap on just in case? And like,
strap on.
Okay. But yeah, they're like sitting on the floor, and we've got Bill and Bright Eyes.
It's just, I mean, I like it because it's funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's showing, they're in space. It's showing like a bit of an effect.
I like, so when they were talking to each other, when it has like the shots of the people talking, they're clearly just looking up like, at the wall. And then it goes to the person who's also looking up at the wall because to each other, they're just up on the wall.
It's so pointless. Like,
I'd be intrigued to know how they shot it because it's 50s.
It's probably two plates together. And they've
it'd be something quite clever for 1953, I imagine.
Yeah.
But that and the hallway scene both can be cut in half.
That's it, yeah. Because I don't think there was any crossover between the two, and split screen stuff is pretty rudimentary.
But yeah, this is the bit where Bright Eyes asked to land on the moon, right? And they're like, "No, but if you do good, maybe you'll be chosen to be the first person to land on the moon."
I see, yes.
So then they're going to go onto the other ship, the shuttle. To go. So the plan is for them to go around to the dark side of the moon. Werner's there to take loads of pictures and analyze them, whilst Bill and Bright Eyes drive around the moon and go back to the space station.
Yes.
Straightforward, easy. Nothing could possibly go wrong.
Well, I mean, if only they were with the real Werner and not the wrongner.
Yeah.
There's a couple of lines that weren't meant to be funny, but there's this one here where they're about to do the countdown for the little ship going off, and they say shove off at count of 10. I was like, a bit rude.
We get a bit of Bright Eyes piloting, like lining up the ship to shoot away.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, like she does have some talent. It's funny she's a colonel. She never really has any sort of power.
No, it seems. Yeah, it's very strange. It seems just pointless that they.
Yeah, she's
a
man's thought of a weak 1950s woman.
Yeah, and she doesn't really ever
Nope.
do anything.
In fact, she gets worse.
She probably does, yeah. She kind of settles a bit at the end, doesn't she?
But
yeah, there's lots of slow space stuff. Here.
And we get Verna chatting to Bright Eyes about the rocket, and she's explaining how she flies the rocket.
And she's supposedly giving him a lesson, but the whole time he's like flirting with her and like pushing his crotch up against like the
bed she's on, yeah.
And at the end, it's like, oh, that's enough for today. Like, I'll give you another lesson tomorrow. And it's like, was that a lesson? You were just slightly explaining how to fly a ship.
Yeah. And then Bill's like, oh, have you done all the camera stuff? And Verna's like, oh, yeah, it's done. And Bill's like, you've forgotten this, like, really basic thing. And he's like, oh, whoopsie me.
Yeah. And then when does he ask him about baseball? Now?
So...
Because he says something about the Dodgers.
Bill was like, oh, Verna, I guess you're a Dodgers fan because you taught in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And Verna's like, what?
He's
what?
Like, huh?
And Bill gets suspicious. And it's funny because... Rongna,
he's just immediately suspicious of it.
Yeah, but also Rongna is an American.
Yeah.
Who somehow hasn't heard of the Dodgers. I've heard of the Dodgers. I don't know what sport they play. Probably baseball.
It is baseball.
But I've heard of the Dodgers.
I mean, also, maybe it's 1953 and they weren't as big.
Maybe these people who were stepping in for real scientists should have researched the real scientists.
I mean, the thing is, you're absolutely right there because he only was ever going to do one guy.
Yeah.
He probably should have realized because I think he even says, right, because you lived in Brooklyn, right? And he's like, oh yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, the thing is, I can't fault it in a way because it immediately gets to, right, he's suspicious of him. But it doesn't make a lot of sense in the context.
Yeah. So Verna goes off down their little floor hatch.
Yes, because there's two rooms that we see in this thing. There's the main room,
and
then there's the under room,
the
basement,
where people never get off the ladder. They're only ever on the ladder in that room.
Yes, almost as if there's no other room at all.
Yeah, but Verna goes down there, and Bill's like, Bright Eyes, that Verna is a phony. He doesn't know who the Dodgers are.
She was asleep as well, so for some reason she's just having a nap on her control chair / lounger / bed. She was just having a nap. He wakes her up and he's like, yeah, he's not a true fan of the Dodgers like me.
But Verna is hanging out on the ladder.
Yeah.
And he overhears this.
And he runs up and starts grabbing him.
He attacks Bill.
And in the kerfuffle, within about 2 seconds, she gets knocked out despite not being part of it.
She gets knocked out and they land on like the thruster.
Yes.
And the rocket starts shooting off.
That was Rongner earlier when he was talking to her. The thruster.
But then because they've hit the thruster, the G-force kicks in.
Yes. Luckily, Brit Eyes was in the chair. The other two aren't so lucky.
And they're rolling around on the floor. They're kind of half wrestling, but can't really move much.
Writhing in pain.
Bright Eyes eventually comes to and stops the acceleration.
Yes.
And Bill knocks Verna out.
Yeah, he gets
and straps him down to the chair. And it's like, wow, that was fun while it lasted, wasn't
that
it?
Was a good little bit.
I was like, oh, I thought that was going to be
also
more of a thing.
Those chairs they're just normal chairs. You can't trap someone in a chair by just making them sit down.
Yeah.
Maybe they have like a catch on them or something. Or a padlock on it.
They're going round the moon, and Bright Eyes and Bill strapping because they've been knocked off course and burnt loads of fuel. They're like, so Bright Eyes is like, fuck it, I'm gonna land on the moon.
It's like, right, well, you just wanted to do this.
She's looking for any excuse to land on the moon.
It's like, oh, we've got too much fuel. Better use some up by landing on the moon.
Yeah. And we get a quick shot here of back at the space station, who have got a message. They get told that Verna has been found by the FBI.
So he's found with his nuts cut off in a basket.
Yeah. And the guy on the station must be a phony.
He must be Rongner.
Yeah, meanwhile, they land on the moon.
And this is the bit you were talking about, where they just land very easily.
No, it wasn't even that, actually.
Yeah,
but yeah, that is one. They just casually land on the moon. Yeah. And again, the miniatures look quite cool.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just, it's quite, it's very kind of twee, isn't it?
Bill unstraps, immediately goes over to Bright Eyes, unstraps her, and is like, "Are you okay?" She's like, oh, "I can't believe we made it." But then she's like, "There's not enough fuel for us to get back."
Yeah, and then he says, "Go powder your nose," and she says, "Go soak your head."
Before that, though, she's like, "Oh, we haven't got enough fuel. What are we gonna do?" And then she kind of calms down and goes, "Sorry to go all female on you." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh yeah, and then that's when he goes, "Go powder your nose."
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, for God's sake!" Just as I was starting to get hooked back into this film, they're like, "Oh yeah, women.
Women can only be emotional." But I did like the comeback, "Go soak your head."
Yeah. They're like, "What do we do with Rognar?" Bill's like, "We're going to tie him up in the storeroom."
He does say like, "Oh, I could like throw him outside or put him through the airlock or something."
But they also realise they don't know where on the moon they are.
Does it really matter?
They've got this big screen that they've got different angles they can look at from around them. And they're looking through them and they can't figure it out. And then at the space station, they're like, they're overdue.
Yeah, they're not like following them at all. They're just
they expect them to just come back around the other side of the moon, and they're like, "This is a very carefully planned mission. They're overdue." And they know about Rognar.
Yeah,
so they like he must have interfered. Shit.
Right. Okay. And for some reason, I think so. I figured out, and I might be wrong, that they need to go get some signal from somewhere. Is that right?
Yeah, Bill's figured out where they are.
Yeah, of course he has, Bill.
And Bright Eyes is like, "Could we rebound like a message off the mountain?" And Bill's like, "Yeah, that's possible, but like it's a 2-man job. A 2-man job.
It has to be men that will do
So
it.
I'm gonna take Werner with me, even though he's a prisoner.
And he's like out
trying to sabotage.
Yeah. I'm gonna take
him with me because he's a man." Right? So he unties him and Werner's like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, I'll come with you to a place where I can overpower you.
Yeah, sure. He unties him, and they they go down on their little chair,
one at a time,
and casually stroll off with definitely Earth gravity.
Yes, and they've got space suits that kind of look like old diving suits with like Bender from Futurama's head.
So this is the other bit I was thinking. Right. So would you say most people in the world know who Neil Armstrong is?
Right. Yes.
And what's Neil Armstrong famous for?
Yes, landing on the first person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Bill's the first man to walk on the moon, and they don't care.
Do we know that?
Yeah, sure? Because they say they haven't been able to land on the moon. That's the whole point, that Bright Eyes wants to land on the moon, and Bill's just casually taking him and a prisoner to be the first people to walk on the moon.
Yeah, it's like this guy who we hate. And the woman's just like fine with it as well.
Yeah,
I hadn't even considered that. Yeah,
like he's literally going to go down in history as the first man on the moon,
and the second man is going to be an assassin, effectively.
Yeah, I'm just like
Bill and his assassin.
In 1953, they really didn't know what was going to be important in history, did they?
Yeah, no, good point. Very good point.
But yeah, they just casually stroll off, and they'll be like, "We'll call you back in 2 hours." And they're like, "We're gonna go up to that mountain. We're gonna climb that mountain in a couple of hours." And I'm like, "Who the fuck can climb a mountain in 2 hours?"
Well, they've got moon gravity, of course,
but they're just walking along.
Yeah, they're just walking around. I missed a lot of this bit because I wasn't paying attention.
Right, so they start climbing up the rock. They get to the top, and they put something down and establish the relay connection.
Yeah, some sort of signal thing.
But then they're like, "Oh, we may not have enough oxygen to fall down to get back." And then somebody falls down, and it's not quite clear which one it is.
Right, so this is what I thought I'd missed something.
But they've smashed their helmet, but you can't really see clearly.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, like, is this Bill? If it's Werner, that could be interesting."
Right. Yeah. Okay, I did get that. I thought I was getting confused, but it was intentionally
See, at first, I thought Werner had fallen. And then when it was the close-up, I was like, oh, maybe that's Bill. And then when they're walking, the person that didn't
Everyone
die,
looks the fucking same in this film.
but then the person who's like struggling to walk back, I'm like, I genuinely don't know which one this is.
So the person who's struggling to walk back is the person who's not smashed?
Yes.
Smashed.
Because they just leave them there because, you know, they're
But
dead.
why? How do they get smashed from falling?
They fell off the rock.
So one person falls off and one person doesn't fall off?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And the one that doesn't starts walking back.
And they don't push them off or anything?
No, they just lose
off.
their footing, yeah.
God, so stupid.
God, so stupid.
It is like, have a fight or something. Have like a slow spaceman
I know,
fight.
it's
I
so
genuinely, I thought I'd missed that, and I was like, oh, I missed like the best bit, but I can't be bothered to go back.
No, it just slips and falls as they're going back down.
Right, okay.
Bright Eyes is like calling out for Bill.
Yeah.
And the person who survived like collapses at the bottom.
I saw this, yeah.
And they're like so cold. And then we get one like long shot with like the miniature, and it's a tiny miniature man who's not moving, and he goes up to the close up and he starts moving again. I was like, that's funny.
It's cool.
And the seat goes down and he climbs on, and then the seat goes up and it's the miniature again. He's just like tangled on the chair. I was like, oh. And he goes in and it's just Bill. I was like, oh. So like the entire like subplot with Werner is just nothing.
There was no intrigue building up to it.
Like they immediately figured it out. They immediately like stopped him and then he dies. It's like cool.
We didn't even see the bomb room.
Yeah. Like what?
I'm beginning to think there wasn't a bomb room the whole time.
Oh.
To be fair, the bomb room was probably on the main ship, not on the small ship.
Yeah. The small ship's only got 2 rooms. The main room and the not main room.
The main room in the basement.
Bill's trying to recover.
Yeah, he's in his chair, of course.
And this bit also made me laugh. Like, so Bright Eyes is trying to call into the station.
Yeah.
And Bill wakes up. She's like, I've been trying to call in for 5 hours. And Bill's like, have you pressed number 3? And she presses it and suddenly the general's on the screen. I was like, oh my God. Like,
so useless.
So useless. Bill's just, he literally says, press number 3. And he's there.
There's probably like 10 buttons on the thing as well.
For 5 hours, she's been like, come in, come in, come in.
God, they really hate women in this film, don't they?
They really do, which is so weird. The fact they've made a woman like the lead pilot,
just make her
made her useless.
Just make her like a sexy, useless woman.
But like, just
like, they're trying. I guess this is progressive.
It's so not progressive. Like,
think about it. This is 1953.
Yeah,
I guess
I would prefer it if there was just no women in this. It was just
all right, who fucking hates women now?
Because then at least like it wouldn't be like stupidly incompetent.
Yeah,
there wouldn't be such in-your-face sexism.
Yeah, I mean they would have just been talking about their hot wives back on Earth instead, wouldn't they?
But they're in contact with a general, and the general's like, "I've got a message about Werner. Is he in the room?" And Bright Eyes is like, "He's not in the room." And General's like, "You need to take him prisoner. He's a spy." And Bright Eyes is like, "He's dead." I was like, what the fuck is this? Oh my God.
She's so happy about it. He's dead. Oh. She's forgotten how to break news to people. It's the moon madness that she
And then she's like, "Oh, and by the way, we had to land on the moon."
Yeah. And he's like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. Before they get the change of mission, because he calls off, he's like upset and he calls them back. But I think he says like, "I'll call you back in exactly 60 minutes." It's like, this is so weird. But what I quite liked about the whole Colonel General calling them is that he's very clearly just on the same set, just behind like a cutout, because he's like the same size as them, and he's just sitting in a desk that's joined onto the set, and he's like, "Hello, come in." Like, you know, I might be stupid, but it took me like a couple of minutes to realize that's what they were doing. It's like, of course, he didn't have a high definition screen, and it's not projected. So yeah.
At this point as well, Bill makes a joke about them being Adam and Eve.
Yes.
I would say like, "Oh, if we didn't get in contact with them, we might have become Adam and Eve." I was like, the problem isn't you dying out; it's the fact your oxygen and rations are running out.
Yes.
You like. What's his... What?
He's basically like,
I want to have sex.
I want to have sex as much as possible before we die.
I've always wanted to be the first man to have sex on the moon.
Well, maybe that's something that he'll care about compared to the first man on the moon, the first man to get laid on the moon. But yeah, they get a call.
Well, Vernal's the first man to get slayed on the moon.
They get the call back, don't they? They're going to be Moonbase 1.
Yes, the president has ordered. They said that you've got enough food and water to last 10 days.
Yeah.
And we'll send something over to help you out. And then he's like, "Oh, Bright Eyes, can you leave the room so I can talk to Bill?" and she goes down there, and obviously she hovers on the stairs because that's what he did. And Bill's like sitting there, all like formal. He's like, I'm not going to talk to you commander to pilot. I'm going to talk to you man to man. You can relax." And Bill gets up and then sits on the desk and like with his back to the screen,
like chilling.
and the chill's like, "So, how's it going with you two?"
Well, we get a revelation here that I don't think was really like laid out at all. That those guys used to go out with each other, right?
Well, they said they were close when they were younger.
Yeah, I think they were like ex-lovers.
And the general's like, "Are you still sweet on her?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "The president thinks you'd make a great couple." It's like, it'd be great for morale if you two got married.
It's such a strange turn.
I was like, what the fuck is happening?
What's happened is that she was getting slightly too progressive, and they have to kind of taper that by marrying her off to the closest man.
And Bill's like, "Oh, she's not interested, but I'll see."
I'll see. It's so funny they got like match made by the president.
And Bright Eyes comes back up and she's like,
"Can I come up? It's lonely down here."
Yeah.
And from now on, she's just like clearly in love with him.
Yeah, she's like, "What's been said?" And he's like, "Oh, well, nothing, don't
but
worry."
I think they're like, their body language changes now as well. And she's like all like swooning up to him and everything. I think we skip ahead a bit. No, maybe we skip ahead and then they're a bit more close.
Yeah,
because the shipment arrives.
We get some random space beeping. Like that's all I can describe it as.
Maybe that's the sound of love in space.
And then another like rocket like lands next to them.
Yeah. And it's got like all the stuff they need.
Bill goes out to check because Bright Eyes are still not allowed out the ship.
I mean, maybe she doesn't have a spacesuit because they only packed them for the men and they left one outside. They didn't pack one with giant like triangular boobs in it.
Yeah.
Conical boobs is what I was thinking of.
Bill pulls out there's like several boxes in there. And Bright Eyes calls him and he's like, "Hey, it's Christmas!" So they've got like rations and stuff, and it's like, okay, that's set now.
It's not actually Christmas though, is
no.
it? Okay.
But
last we saw it was like the 30th of September.
Yeah. So they're just gonna live in these two rooms forever
on their lovely marital beds.
Yeah, they can't even share a bed. But anyway,
they can push the lounges together.
Bright Eyes wants to talk to the general, and she's like, "I will marry him, but I've got one demand," which we don't find out. Me and Christine
we do find out, yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't sure what it was. I want to know what you think it was, because me and Christine had different ideas of what it was.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure...
One was more... My original thought was a bit more cynical, but we'll see.
I also missed the part where they said they were getting married until now.
Yeah, no, so did I.
Okay,
it doesn't come up.
Yeah.
So then they're getting married.
Yeah, suddenly they're getting married by people on a screen, and I was like, "What the fuck?"
And it's the president, who is a woman.
Right.
It makes me laugh as well. How like
that's why she wants to matchmake them
in a weird kind of super future world from 1953, the far distance of 1970, the weird world has a woman president, and in 2022 there's never been a woman president.
We've never had president matchmaker, so that's
so this bit really made me laugh because I'd kind of lost my patience.
Yes, me too. Yeah,
the president was like, her first instruction was like, "Right, now you're married, I've established Moonbase 1. Bill, you're in charge of the Moonbase. And it's like, what?
Yeah, well,
like she's the pilot. He's his co-pilot, and the first thing
but
this
he
president
gets
does
promoted though.
He gets promoted to commander of Moonbase 1.
But he gets promoted to brigadier general.
Brigadier general,
which I think it outranks her.
Yeah,
and that was what her request was.
So, okay,
that he got an upgrade or whatever
it's
called, was a promotion.
She then gives him a gift.
Right,
and pins it. It's like a badge or something.
Well, it looks like a thing a kids made, but that's the thing. That's the brigadier thing, I think.
Right. So I thought it was just a badge, and I was like, maybe that's what she requested.
Yeah, but yeah.
So
she requested that he outrank her.
She's like, I'll only marry that guy if you make him my boss and you take away all my power.
That's exactly what it is.
What the fuck?
Because the brigadier general's fairly high.
yeah, he is. And then they have like a really, really over the top big kiss.
Yeah, they do
and
one
it's
before, and then the second one, they're like, and now kiss. And he fucking grabs her arm and just smushes his face into her.
Oh, and then it's roll credits.
Yeah.
That was one of the most bizarre things I've watched recently.
Yeah.
Apparently
it literally says here, a commissioned officer in the Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps who ranks above a colonel. So they put him one above her. She's like, I can't possibly be a woman who outranks her husband.
It's not like she's the first person ever to land a ship on the moon or anything. She doesn't deserve a promotion for that. Oh, God.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, like, the older films have slower pacing, but God, for an hour-long film, it certainly wasn't breezy, was it?
Yeah, so I've got some trivia.
Yes.
The first thing, so I went on Wikipedia after to get some of the
Was
info.
this what it was supposed to remind you of? Yeah, I've got it.
And it says on Wikipedia, Project Moonbase is unusual for its time in both attempting to portray space travel in a realistic manner and for depicting a future in which women hold positions of authority and responsibility equal to men. An example, the President of the United States is a woman. And I was like, you cannot say this is like a
To be fair, though, people were probably like, what? A woman president? Oh, we really are in the future. Wow.
But it's not, it's so sexist.
Yeah, and like I was talking about the pacing then, but even just the fact that the whole marriage thing and them getting married comes in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah,
it was approaching an hour, and I was like, I must have a version that's cut short. Like there must be something else that's going to happen. You know, Werner's going to come. No, he doesn't.
You won't be surprised to find out this was shot in 10 days.
Wow, I mean, it's probably written in 3 days by the sounds.
So yeah, like. I think this could have been a good film. It could have been at least
totally.
Like if you'd made the Werner plotline go somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
Actually have a bit of more intrigue.
I think what we needed pacing wise is we needed to be introduced to
going to space earlier.
We're introduced to the good guys first, then go to the bad, then have them talk about the bad guys, then we show the bad guys, just less of the bad guys, just a quick switch through. Don't have Roundtree in that, just have the switch. Maybe even don't meet anyone. Then straight to space, like you say.
Yeah, and then have more intrigue.
Have a bit of intrigue on the space station, then a bit on... Maybe he tries to go to the bomb room and he gets caught out.
Yeah, maybe even have like another character...
get to see the bomb room.
Maybe have another character that sacrifices themselves.
Yeah.
To, like, stop in Werner.
And maybe, even in the 1950s style, have a little push around on that rock, and then we don't know who falls off, make that more of a dramatic...
Like a Star Trek fight.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
And also... Like maybe like cut out all the fucking blatant sexism. Like it's so over the top.
I think that's kind of unfortunately part and parcel with this kind of film. As in this age of film. But
it's like sometimes you watch like older films that kind of isn't as in your face about it.
Yeah.
And it still has elements.
I think because this is in its own way showing women in a different situation, it kind of makes the actual sexism way more apparent.
Yeah.
Because the people who are reacting to this like future world are like just the normal people in the 1950s.
Yeah, it's the fact that they're trying to pretend to be progressive whilst
also being very derogatory.
This film's fucking written by Joss Whedon, wasn't it?
No, because if it was, she would have fallen over and her top would have opened up.
Ah, yes, of course.
And the old guy's like dick would have gone in her face or something.
No, that's off camera.
Oh yeah. She asked for an extra bit of dialogue.
But yeah, aside like the dialogue's terrible, but like it's shot really well. The miniatures are great.
Yeah.
And even like for 1953, even like some of the when they're out on the moon, when they're in their actual space shuttle, the stuff on the walls. Yeah, it looks really cool for 1953.
And the screen with the guy on it, like there's the effects. The effects are genuinely good in this.
Yeah,
and the delivery and stuff you can kind of not fault because it's part and parcel, like I say.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just like plot wise, it could have done with another go over 100%.
Yeah,
I've got like a couple of bits here. One, you may have seen when you were looking it up. There's a version with Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, I didn't really look at what it was though.
So it is. It's a series. I think they might be on our Netflix, but it's one of those kind of like watch along commentary things, and it's been going for quite a while. And they've got an hour and a half commentary thing for this, and you watch it, and in the bottom you have like little outlines of characters watching the film. And they're like pausing it and making jokes and stuff. So it's kind of a little bit like what we're doing now. And I really wanted to watch it, but I obviously then we'd be too inspired. But
yeah,
I might go back because that's on YouTube as well. I may well go back and watch that, see if they pick up anything. I mean, they would have had time to write it and all that.
Yeah,
as well,
I watched this yesterday.
Yeah, but the other thing that I've got, which is a really amazing bit of trivia, is this film actually inspired the popular game Among Us. That's not true, but I was wondering how you'd react.
Oh wow!
Oh what?
See, like going into ratings, it's really quite hard because it's a product of its time.
Yes, it is. In more ways than one.
Some things of its time are really good, and some are just like, oh. But then if you overlook kind of that stuff, the plot is still quite weak. The dialogue's bad, even for the 50s. Like, this is 10 years after Citizen Kane.
Yeah, and there's like, I've watched Alfred Hitchcock films that were from around this era. And they're incredibly more engaging than this. You know?
Yeah. So you still can't. I like the miniatures. I think that you could give it credit for that.
Yeah. But like a couple of points of credit, you know?
Yeah. So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I'm just gonna go like 3.
Yeah.
I was gonna go with 4, but I didn't really like it that much.
I was thinking of 4, but also the thing that at the end of the film that stood out for me most was
it was just a really sexist film.
Yeah, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. Like from the spanking bit on, it's just like, ooh, like, See, I'm also gonna give it a 3.
Yeah, and that's 3 points for like miniatures, effects, and
like being in space. Like
some music.
Yeah,
no, all that kind of stuff generally, but. Yeah, no, I think it's potentially one of the lowest we've scored.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it was old. It was because it was old and sexist.
It is the oldest thing we've watched. But also, like, the plot's just not, like, it has potential to be good and it just isn't. The main interesting thing being the Werner subplot is just brushed over so quickly, even though they spend 20 minutes setting it up at the start of the film.
Yeah, it was a real wasted opportunity, that whole subplot. Yeah. And it kind of just served to start the story off and then didn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. Yeah. And then it became like a weird male fantasy of like marrying someone on the moon.
Yeah.
First man to take away a woman's rights on the moon.
Yeah. Established early that men are dominant on the moon. It's not called the womoon, is it?
Wow, that may have been the funniest joke we've ever heard on this podcast.
I'm here all pod.
I know, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to an end of that, which means it's now time for
personal projects.
And this time, it's personal.
Projects?
So, Sam, what have you been watching, reading, doing, dancing? Yeah.
I have read the first volume of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman.
Well, how big is that?
Well, I read it on my tablet, my Amazon Fire tablet.
So it's about a centimetre thick.
Exactly, yeah. It didn't take me long. I started it last night. I finished it this morning.
Oh, so it's not big.
No, it's apparently the series. So I watched it because the Netflix series has come online a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I've heard really good things, and I've had a couple of people say, "Oh, you should watch it." And I've always planned to read the comics, and I've actually up on that shelf somewhere got some of the original comics, and I don't know where which points they are, so I have to grab those down and see if I've read those bits now if they're upcoming.
Yeah,
but I've heard that the first season covers the first 2 volumes,
right?
So it's quite an easy bit to get through before watching it, kind of thing.
Are you gonna get the second volume then?
Well, both of them are free on Kindle Unlimited, which I still have a subscription to.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll read the other one and then I'll give that a watch at some point.
So good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's strange because it follows like a vague plot, but it's kind of like individual stories along the way.
Right.
He's not really the god of dreams, but he's kind of like the dream
Sandman.
Yeah, exactly. He's called Dream, or sometimes they call him Morpheus. And yeah, I know they don't call him Morpheus much, but it's 1988, so it was well before the Matrix. He's in a position. He kind of loses his powers at the start, and there's 3 items that he's put his powers into, and he goes through and collects them. And it's set within the DC universe, which I don't think the TV show will be, because there's a part where he's like, one of the things is this gem, and this bad guy had it, and then the Justice League took the gem when they defeated him, and he goes to the Justice League headquarters. He talks to Martian Manhunter, where's the gem?
Okay.
Yeah, and the Martian
random.
Manhunter sees him as the Martian dream god, so he's like, no, he's scared of him. It's very strange. And there's a stand-up doing jokes about Batman at one point.
Nice.
It's just and John Constantine is in one of the first stories, which is quite cool because it's Constantine with this dream god as a sidekick. It's a fun little story. It's super dark. It's quite violent, and it's a horror comic in a lot of ways. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I'm interested to see how they pull it off on the TV.
Nice,
yeah.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I've also been reading.
Yeah.
I think because obviously House of Dragon starts this weekend. Time recording, the first episode would be out. So I've been seeing lots of adverts and stuff for that. I haven't really watched a trailer because I don't really do that. But I've also just been getting loads of general Game of Thrones content on TikTok and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I really liked those books when I read them 10 years ago. I'm gonna read it again.
That noise.
It sounds like water running.
Okay.
So yeah, I started on Friday, reading A Game of Thrones. And it's really good.
Yeah.
I'm halfway through it. I've read 350 pages in
it's a
5 days.
Chunky first book. I think Amy's actually reading it as well. So yeah, you have.
It is, and obviously you kind of know the plot and what's going on, but it's still just good to read, and you're like, oh yeah, and it's kind of having already read it and watched the series that you then pick up on things. You're like, oh
right, yeah, early little,
Ned Stark never calls Jon his son. He's my blood. But yeah, it's really good. And I've literally, because my shoulder, I've been waking up early in the morning.
Yeah.
So I'll just get ready for work and just read a couple of chapters and then get home. Cool. And it's really nice to instead of just scrolling through TikTok for an hour before I go to bed, just read a couple of chapters. It's meant to be the whole no screen time before bed makes you sleep better.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
So I've been just been sitting on my balcony with the light on, just reading my book, and I'm cute. Actually, I'm quite enjoying this. I've been meaning to get back into reading for ages and just never quite found something that hooked me.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I'm now reading A Game of Thrones again. I'll probably go straight into like A Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords, etc.
Yeah,
Just
I never got through the first book, unfortunately. I think I started reading it I did while the series is on.
Yeah.
And I kind of the similarities, and it was kind of difficult to get past. But yeah, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah,
I'd like to get maybe as the House of Dragons on, I might delve into that first.
Yeah, because I was partly I literally finished the first chapter and I was like, oh, maybe I should read Fire and Blood.
Yeah.
To build up for House of Dragon. But I was
Right.
like, I've already started reading this now, so I'll just read this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just been good.
Nice.
So what else have you been doing?
Watching. I watched Lightyear, the Buzz Lightyear prequel-ish.
Yeah, Christina was quite interested in watching it, but I'm not really that interested. So
yeah,
how is it?
Yeah, it wasn't really what I was expecting. So there's an opening kind of crawl, but it's not really a crawl. It says like in 1993, Andy saw a film starring Buzz Lightyear and bought a toy, and it was his favorite toy. And then it's like, this is that film. And it's like, interesting premise, but it's clearly not that film because it's a modern film.
Yeah. I did see one TikTok that was, it had the bit where Buzz first wakes up in Andy's room and he's like, checking his side and checking the air, and then it's got a clip where the actual Buzz Lightyear does that in that film, and it's like, oh,
there is some
that's
good
cool
stuff
mirror.
like that, yeah. And it's Chris Evans instead of Tim Allen, and he does a good Buzz Lightyear. You wouldn't notice really. Right. It's slightly more serious, like action movie version, and it was. The effects are really good. Like it looks fantastic, and it's a really fun space film. It has. Funnily enough, we talked about a space film this episode. It has a lot of kind of interstellarish moments.
Nice.
To varying degrees that I won't really go into because they're plot kind of heavy.
Who's the villain?
Zurg is the villain from 2.
And is Zurg in this?
Maybe Zurg turns up, maybe.
I feel like Zurg has to be in this.
Maybe Zurg in some form or other. But it's good. There's a little cast of characters as there are with these kind of films, and they're kind of mixed. It's like there's a main girl who's like his friend or woman, whatever, and she's quite good. And then there's a couple of comic relief characters that are okay. I think one of them might be Taika Waititi. Like okay, it's just he's in everything
fair
now.
Enough.
But yeah, it's good fun. Like I wasn't planning on watching it, and I listened to a podcast. I accidentally listened into the spoilers, so I kind of knew a bit going into it.
Yeah.
But the way that people talk about it in a review, and they kind of the bits they focused on weren't really what I would say were like the main parts. So I still had a lot of surprises.
Okay, cool.
It's better than I was expecting. I don't know exactly how I'd rate it, but. Yeah, I'd say it's worth the watch. It's the classic hour and 40 minutes. So
your favourite.
It's a nice length there. And,
I will probably get around to it at some point, probably soon.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's got some good action and sci-fi kind of stuff. Lots of fun space things, hyperspeed and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's bits where you're like, oh yeah, like you say, like, oh, that's from Buzz Lightyear, the character.
Yeah.
There's a ship towards the end, and you're like, that looks a lot like the one that he comes in the box. You're like, oh, see what they did there. Yeah.
Nice.
And I've got another thing that I watched that you mentioned a little while ago. But have you got anything?
Yes, I was gonna mention. I mentioned last week that I watched the first episode of Fleabag.
Oh yeah.
I've now finished Fleabag.
Yes.
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Christina absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And yeah, it is just like it's one of those where you get through it and you're like. All these characters are terrible people.
Yes, yeah. I think the first season particularly feels really bleak.
Yeah.
And when you find out more about her recent past and everything with her best friend, you're like, oh god.
Yeah.
But there's some nice moments, like what's he called? Hugh Dennis.
Hugh Dennis is
he's
great. He's the nicest guy.
Yeah.
He's great. Like when he just runs the cafe for a day.
Yeah. He still wears his suit.
He's adorable. And Andrew Scott's character's he's an alcoholic, but he's a nice guy.
And it's great because like he's so like down to earth, but he's also so like
religious.
Catholic. Like he's unwavering. Well, he's not unwavering, but he's so like.
I love the bit where they're first like having that G&T, and she says something like blasphemous, and a picture falls off the wall, and he's like, I love it when he does that. I was like, and obviously that comes back into play later.
Yes, it does.
On.
And the moment that you mentioned seeing on a TikTok when he first sees her doing her off-camera thing,
so fucking creepy.
It's so well done because you're like, it's like, is it because he gets her more, or is it because he's more in tune with like?
Yes, I kind of took it as like he's the first person to really pay attention to her.
Yeah, and it kind of she talks at one point with the therapist who. She talks about like, oh, I'm never alone. I've always got people with us and stuff. Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's like her weird trauma that we're kind of the trauma and like the baggage. And I feel like there's some pretty hard hitting moments, but
yeah.
It's
when you find out about Boo, and it's like, oh shit. Yeah. And her sister's husband is just like the worst man in the world.
Murray from
Stranger Things.
But he's so good at it. He's just so good. He's like the proper alcoholic.
I hate him so much. And at the end where her sister leaves him.
Yeah.
Like you're just like, fuck, finally.
The moment when you think it's going that way at the end of the first season, and there's like the sex exhibition thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, that whole episode is just, because Olivia Colman is just like,
she's
I think
great.
It's like
I hate her as well.
The best things I've seen her in. She's so good.
She plays that like manipulative.
It's like the like minor facial expressions you can see when something's going her way, or when she's upset with something. And like the dad, and it's just...
She's a bit like Umbridge and Harry Potter, of just the nasty, nasty kill you of kindness kind of like...
Yeah.
You can see like behind the eyes that she's just like screaming at you.
And I think her sister is really funny as well. I kind of appreciated her more this second time watching through. I think there's just she's just like so manically like reserved.
I really like how like she's clearly a very successful, not lawyer, but like but it's still
like, you're a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I work with lawyers.
But like it says a lot about her that she's still just like hanging out with her sister who's a wreck. She's clearly not all there together. Her and her potential future boyfriend who's got the same name. Claire.
And the weird stepson who like tries to get in the bath with her.
He's so weird. I love the bit where Claire and Claire go off and Fleabag's like, bye Claire, looks at the camera, bye Claire. Oh yeah, very good. Very good. I'm glad I watched it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I can't imagine. I think the only people I know who haven't really enjoyed it, I think my mum started watching it and she was a bit put off by the sexual stuff because it goes
quite sexual.
It goes in there very early. I think it talks about anal sex in like the first scene.
Yeah.
Because she's got that handsome guy who she like keeps hooking up with, and good stuff. Yeah.
See, so there's another thing.
I was listening back to an episode of ours from a few weeks ago, and you asked me if I'd seen the Riverdale season 6 finale.
Yes.
And I watched it not long after that, and I realised I forgot to talk about it on pod. And it was kind of insane. So I listened to that episode, and the last I left it with you, there was they defeated the evil wizard psychic Magneto-esque character, and the meteor was coming towards Riverdale. And a lot of this episode, so there's magical barriers, they can't leave. They're all stressing about how they're going to do it. They're all having like identity crises, and they realize that Veronica, who has like rogue-like kind of sapping people's life force powers,
right?
They're going to all cut their hands, and she's going to suck their superpowers out of them and then give them to Cheryl, who's literally got Phoenix powers at this point.
Okay.
And then she's going to get the powers by kissing Veronica. So there's a nice long make-out kiss.
Yeah.
And then she wears what can only be described as a Scarlet Witch outfit, flies into the sky and shoots all the powers, even though some of the powers weren't shooty powers. She shoots them at the meteor, and then everyone wakes up and it's the 1950s and they're all wearing their old outfits and they're all teenagers again, despite being 35.
Yeah.
And the only person who remembers is Jughead, and he's like, we're in a weird alternate thing, and I'm gonna have to solve it.
See, that's the bit I knew.
Yeah, and it's
wild.
It was wild. It was it wasn't the most interesting episode, but it had some of the strangest moments. I'll say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it so? Is there going to be one more season?
It's one more. So I think what they did was we need to do, because they've had like weird dream sequences and stuff where they've worn their comic appropriate outfits, and it was always been like, oh, if only we lived in this wonderful world. But now it literally, and the aesthetic's always been like, they've had iPhones, but there's been like occasional old cars, and they wear like old school uniforms and Latin jackets, but they've just gone fully into it. And I don't know if it's going to be a full like 23, 25 episode thing, or if it's just going to be a short one, but whatever it is, as long as it's not just like it's normal and everything's normal, but they're in the 50s, it'll be fun, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you will be watching.
I will indeed watch it. So that's me for the week.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't got anything else. So if you enjoyed this episode, as we hope you did, I quite enjoyed doing this episode.
I did too.
I enjoyed it more than the film we watched. So please go onto your podcast listener application and give us 5 stars if you don't mind. We'd be very, very appreciative. We always are. It's always lovely to see those reviews come in. If you want to get in contact with us directly, you can message us, can't you, Sam?
You can send us an email at theprojectpod@gmail.com, or you can reach us via any of our social medias in the episode description, which is in the link tree. We talked last week about Kimberly Stark, who was in Shadow Project 2.
Shadow Project?
Shadow Chaser 2. And she replied to the comment that I wrote last episode.
Oh, yeah.
And she said she was also in Cybercop 2, which was another Zagarino
I think we
one.
mentioned that.
Yeah, she says, so for the Shadow Chaser 2, she said, I was in the lab, I got blown up, if I remember correctly. She said, I also had a role on Cybercop 2. I played Gloria in that one, which we may revisit if we ever get round to our Zagarino
Zag project.
I had an idea for the name, Zigging for Zag. It doesn't really mean anything, but
no, I want to keep project in the title somehow.
Zigzagarino.
Yeah, Project Zagarino.
Yeah. We can do something more interesting than that.
But yeah, if you want to. Did you say?
Yeah, I said, so if you want to find our YouTube, you can do what I imagine Kimberly did there and find us via the link tree in the episode description, or you can just search for us, or search for any films that you're in and then tell us that you're in those films.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Or if you just want to kind of complain about the sexism in Project Moonbase, our ears and inboxes are always open for you.
Cool. So that wraps up the show. It's been a pleasure having you along. I will hear you next week.
Yeah, and I'll see you on the dark side of the moon.
Yeah, and I just, hope my one hope for the rest of this podcast is for Sam to get promoted above me.
That's who's to say I'm not already above you. Is that so we can get married? Is that
my wish has come true?
And now we can get married. The end. They all lived happily ever after on the moon.
Bye.
Bye.